Chapter 12. Everything was going according to plan. Molly and Petula spent the afternoon in a room in the Blyersville Hotel, and while it was far from being the best hotel in the world, its beds were old and lopsided and its oak furniture was scratched and worn out. It was a good place for Molly to catch her breath, and Petula found the armchair comfortable. Molly instructed Miss Adderstone and Edna to wait for her in the minibus. While she started on the next phase of her plan, she picked up a telephone and called the international operator. "The name's Albaster. They live in America," Molly explained. "I'm afraid you'll have to be a bit more precise than that," the operator replied. "Which state and which town?" Polchester or Pilchester or Porchester. It's somewhere near you north. I'm sorry, but this is just too vague. There are thousands of alabasters in New York. It would take me all night to go through them. Are you feeling relaxed? Molly said slowly. Sorry, said the operator. But this is some sort of prank. You can hang up now. Or no. Thanks for your help. Said Molly. She was very disappointed to learn that Rocky was going to be a lot more difficult to find than she'd expected. Still, Molly was excited to be in the hotel room. She'd switched the television on and sat down to count her prize money. Inside the envelope, the money was in a bundle held together by a flat piece of paper. Molly ripped the paper out and fanned the cash like a pack of cards. She'd never had a 10-pound note, and never seen a 50-pound note, but let alone 60 50-pound notes. 3,000 pounds looked good, smelt good, and felt good. The money made Molly feel powerful and free. She could go anywhere in the world with 3,000 pounds. Australia, India, or China, or America, to find Rocky. That's what she would do. But first, she wanted to get a few things. So, putting the money into her pocket and her hypnotism book under her jacket, she and Petula went shopping. 10 minutes later, they were walking down Blyersville High Street. Molly was carrying a traveling basket for Petula, which she had bought in Animal Love, the pet shop. Petula was looking proud and perky with a brand new red collar around her neck. Molly stopped at the optician's and, on a whim, went inside. 5 minutes later she came out again in a pair of sunglasses. She'd always wanted a pair, and now she felt they might also be useful to disguise her. She didn't want people recognizing her from the talent show. And then she continued on around the bend and road, and paused in front of the wooden-framed window of the antique shop Moldy Old Gold. The window display was an eccentric collection of interesting bits and pieces. Mirrored glass balls, cut glass crystal goblets, silver boxes with secret compartments, a parasol with a parrot handle, magnifying glasses, a corset, a huge ostrich egg, a bowl of wax fruit, a sword, a pair of Victorian riding boots, and then, on a small velvet platform, on the back of the display, a golden disc caught Molly's eye. On the surface was etched a black spiral that seemed to pull Molly's eyes toward it. It was beautiful, and though her breath had steamed up on the window, she was sure that it was on a chain. It looked exactly like a pendulum should look. Molly took off her sunglasses, pushed open the shop door, and stepped inside. An old-fashioned bell rang over the top of the door, alerting the shopkeeper. Mr. Mould, who was at the back, polishing a pair of antique spectacles. He briskly licked his fingers, tweaked his bushy eyebrow, and scurried to the front to greet the customer. When he saw a scruffy child with a pug dog, his eagerness faded. "Afternoon," said Molly, looking up from a display case full of jewellery and fancy hairpins. "Can I help?" asked Mr. Mould. "Yes, please. I'd like to have a look at the pendulum from your window display, please." Molly had decided to treat herself. She needed a proper, heavy pendulum, and it would be the perfect present to herself to celebrate her achievements in hypnotism. "A pendulum. Hummed the shopkeeper. He went to the window and reached inside. Then he brought out a tray and put it on the glass counter between him and Molly. I think there may be a pendulum sort of thing in here. Molly looked inside the drawer. It was full of colored bead necklaces, chains, lockets, and pendants. But the pendulum she'd seen wasn't there. Ah, the one I'm talking about is the golden one on the velvet at the back of the window. Mr. Mould coughed. I'm afraid that pendant will be beyond what you can afford, young lady. He fetched the antique pendulum on its chain and let Molly admire it. Close up, it looked even better than I had seen before. Its gold was worn but not dented, and the spiral on it was perfectly etched. How much is it? Well, £550. It's solid 22-carat gold and rather old. Perhaps this one would be more suited to your purse. Mr. Moult picked up a pewter necklace with a dull brown stone in it. Molly ignored the pewter piece and studied the golden pendulum. Its spirals seemed to turn as she looked at it. She found it irresistible. She had to have it. She was sick of not being able to afford things. From now on, she'd buy whatever she wanted. With an extravagant gesture, she reached inside her pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. I'll take the gold pendulum, she said politely, and she counted out 11 50-pound notes. You must have been lucky at the races, Mr. Mould stared. No, lucky at the talent competition, Molly explained. Oh, you're the girl who won. My granddaughter called me and told me about you. She said you were fabulous. The old man couldn't disguise his amazement. He was astonished that a girl as ordinary looking, as ugly even, as Molly could be thought as cute, gorgeous and lovely, which is how her granddaughter had described her. He shook Molly's clammy hands. So you had them all cracking their ribs laughing, he said, half hoping Molly would do an impersonation for him or tell him a joke. Molly said, smiling enigmatically. So you're buying yourself a present. The shopkeeper pressed the buttons on the till, making it open with a ting, and slipped the £550 into its drawer. Yep. And where did you learn to perform like that? Molly was so happy and excited she didn't mind telling him. From a very old book, she said mysteriously, tapping the big heavy shape under her jacket. You're joking! No, I'm not. It's a very special book. Which is why you're carrying it about with you, said the shopkeeper. You got it. Mr. Mould wrapped Molly's purchase. Thank you, and enjoy your pendant. Thank you. Goodbye. As Molly tucked the parcel into her pocket and turned to leave, the bell above the shop door rang, and another customer came in. In a cloud of cigarillo smoke, he busted past Molly, knocking her slightly. Molly stepped out of the shop, pulling up her collar of her scruffy blue jacket and putting her new sunglasses on again. Mr. Mould gazed after her. The new customer blocked his view. Let me have another look at the glasses you showed me this morning, he demanded. Ah, yes, Professor Knockman, said Mr. Mould, shaken from his daze. He pulled the spectacles that he'd been polishing earlier out of his top pocket and put them on the counter. You'll never guess it, but the woman out there had just won the town talent competition. His impatient customer wasn't at all concerned with modern Blairsville life, but he did have an interest in Blairsville life 100 years ago. He'd been into Mr. Mould's shop several times since he'd discovered that the elderly antique dealer knew the story of town's famous Mr. Logan, and that Mr. Mould had even bought and sold artifacts that had been used in Mr. Logan's traveling hypnotism show. Today, Professor Knockman was back in the shop because a pair of antique spectacles were on the counter now. They had black lenses with a white swirling power on them and were said once belonged to Dr. Mesmer himself. Supposed to be a protection against hypnotic eyes, Mr. Mould explained. Fun but foolish, but I should think, he added hopefully, very appropriate for your museum collection. The spectacles were expensive, and Professor Knockman hadn't decided whether to buy them or not. He picked them up and scratched at his oily mustache with his plump, long-nailed finger. Mr. Mould continued to stare at the high street, at Molly and Petula, who were strolling along, looking at shop windows. Apparently she can dance like Ginger Rogers. My granddaughter thought she was beautiful. She looks quite plain to me. Well, I suppose it's all in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, whatever, said the professor, trying to trying the strange spectacles on and looking up at the ceiling. She bought herself a beautiful gold pendant, though she called it a pendulum. A funny thing for a child to buy. I hope she doesn't fritter all of that prize money that way. A pendulum, said Professor Mockman, suddenly giving the shopkeeper his full attention. He turned his squirrely spectacle eyes clad on him. How much money did she win? £3,000. I believe it. It's amazing, isn't it? She looks so ordinary. Well, you know what they say. Don't judge a book by its cover. And talking of books, when I asked her where she learned to perform like that, she said from a very special old book. What an eccentric child! What book? Demanded Knockman, his nose twitching like a dog that had just picked out a scent. Some book she's carrying. Professor Knockman snatched off the antique spectacles and at last looked out at the street. The girl, she was reading the ads outside the newspaper stand and held awkwardly in the crook of her arm under her jacket was the hard-edged shape of a large rectangular object. Knockman gasped. He'd hit the jackpot, he was sure of it. His mind raced as he thought about what Mr. Gold had been saying. The girl had got a pendulum and a whole load of money. Everyone thought she was gorgeous, but she wasn't, and the secret of her success lay in a very special old book. A book she obviously didn't want anyone to see, since she was hiding it under her jacket. Nuckman's gut instinct surged up and told him that the shape under the small, odd-looking girl's jacket was, without a shadow of a doubt, his hypnotism book. Molly and Petrulo were now disappearing around the corner. The professor lunged for the door handle, then removed the spectacles. I'll take the glasses. How much did you say they were? They're absolutely unique. £450. He handed the silver-rimmed spectacles over. Knockman's mind was galloping. He knew the shopkeeper was charging too much, but if there were ever really effective anti-hypnotism glasses, then he might need them, and he didn't have time to bargain. I'll take them. Professor put the money out of the desk, and don't bother wrapping them. And if you get anything else on hypnotism, call me in the States. Here's my number. Certainly, said the shopkeeper happily. He never sold so much in one afternoon. It had been a good idea to open on a Sunday after all. Goodbye. Professor Knockman hurried out of the shop, frantically throwing his cigarro out the door on the ground, and looked for the girl. Burping with excitement, he puffed his way down the street in the direction she had taken. Molly and Petula, however, had returned to the hotel, where Miss Adderstone and Edna were faithfully waiting in the minibus. Molly went to her room, collected her knapsack, and came down to pay her bill. Then she went down to the minibus and climbed in. Petula hopped in after her. "Where to, miss?" Miss Adderstone asked, in her rubbery-mouthed voice, still not wearing her false teeth. "The airport," Molly said confidently. She sat back and gave Petula a good stroke. Professor Knockman, who had been looking for the girl in other shops, bustled into the drive of the hotel just as the blue minibus was pulling out. The driver had a mad look in her eye and seemed to be wearing a pair of knickers on her head. As the vehicle turned into traffic, Professor Knockman caught a second glimpse of the plain-looking talent contest winner. She was sitting in the back of the minibus like a starlet, with a pug dog beside her and a big burgundy-colored book on her knee, and through the low window he saw that she was holding was unmistakably a passport. Professor Lockman knew that the girl had the hypnotism book. He dived for the back of the minibus, but he missed the vehicle completely and tripped on the side of the sidewalk. Getting a mouthful of exhaust, he started to panic. Knockman realized that the hypnotism book, his book, was sliding away from him. The book was essential to his plan, his brilliantly conceived secret plan that was going to catapult him to the top of his profession. Without it, he'd never achieve his aims. Now there was a good chance that the girl with the passport planned to take it far away. Desperately, Knockman ran, huffing and puffing, into the hotel and rushed upstairs to his room. He threw everything in his suitcase and charged back down. "Are you leaving, sir?" asked the receptionist, alarmed. "Have you paid your bill?" But Knockman didn't reply. He was already out the door. "To the airport," he growled at the sleepy taxi driver who was reading the paper. As the car moved off, Knockman willed the traffic lights not to turn red. Beads of sweat were dribbling down his forehead. Then, as the taxi made good progress, he realized that he could still catch the girl, and he began to cool down. That book was his destiny, and all he had to do was follow it. That's the end of the chapter. It went pretty much according to my plan. I didn't go on that big of a shopping spree, but she still did buy some stuff, like I said. Then she also bought a tiny pendulum. I think that that pendulum belonged to Dr. Logan himself because Professor Knockman said that the elderly shopkeep had sold and had items um, that had been owned by Dr. Logan himself. I think that that pendulum belonged to Dr. Logan. It's also nice that Molly got nice things. Again, I am going to say that this is a terrifying ability she has. Utterly spooky. My prediction is that she's gonna go to the U.S., try and find the Alabastry family, and then she's gonna find Rocky and accidentally hypnotize him, or hypnotize him to come back, or something like that. And then he's going to wake up and yell at her, and they're gonna not be friends anymore. And then at the end, Molly's gonna apologize and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Rocky. I didn't mean to hypnotize you." Well, you should be grateful that at least they didn't hypnotize you to think you were a sheep. Well, bye, Rocky. And then they both leave and get adopted or something. That's the end of the chapter.